It's been such an honor to host you for our summit. Much thanks to every participant on behalf of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Now, before we do our recap, let's take a look at what our talented graphic recorder, Sam Brad from Drawing Change, has illustrated based on the sessions. Sam's graphic recordings have been used to capture the conversations at events hosted by the World Health Organization, the First Nations Health Authority, as well as the University of British Columbia. And this is his first time he's mentioned that he's had to draw anything about radioactive waste, and he's shared that he's learned a lot. So I'm happy to turn things over to Sam so he can describe these graphics.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Karine. Today, I'm joining you from the unceded territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh on the West Coast, also known as Vancouver in Canada. And my name is Sam, and I'm a graphic recorder. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to listen and draw all of these various perspectives from the panelists and the conversations and everybody who was given a keynote. And so I'd like to just share a few of the images, and knowing that all of the images are going to be available to participants afterwards for the report. And so I'm just going to share a few things from what I've been able to hear and draw. And so we began, of course, with Elder Dr. Imelda Purley, who grounded us both in the land, but also in the sacred teachings for 7 generations. And so that theme of the 7 generations braiding us together kind of has helped to inform all of this work. Laurie Swami welcomed us, talking about finding a solution made in Canada, and again, inviting us on this journey together. So what we're here to do, of course, is to look at how to manage nuclear waste safely, and hearing that it doesn't need to be a one-size-fits-all approach. And again, the text here is in the land because we know that we can't leave our waste to future generations. Everyone wants to find good solutions together. And so when we talk about good solutions, there was the public research poll, and the 4 main questions from that poll were these. What are the alternatives? What does safety look like? What is the future of nuclear technology? And when it comes to transportation, how might that work? And so some of the themes that we heard from the public research was minimizing the impact on the environment, reducing the need for transportation, promoting transparency, making sure that the facility or facilities are away from population centers, and reducing the impact on future generations. The guiding principles also were on the left-hand side, and you can see the amount of endorsement, very, very high numbers throughout. Lots of details and the statistics in the report are also available on the website, lots of numbers. And then we shifted into the presentation by Leah Zaidi about foresight and the 4 scenarios that she gave us. So as a futurist, Leah gave us 4 scenarios, and they were things like continuation. So what is business as usual going to look like? What would be a discipline scenario if we kind of had a more rigid approach? What would it be like if we were not successful and things collapsed? And then the final one around transformation. So what would transformation look like in a new successful future? And so what she helped us do was think about what society could look like in 100 years or 1,000 years. And so it could look like intelligent design. It could look like a continuation scenario with an artificial Earth. It might look like civilization replenishing, or if we're not on the right track, it might look like feudal compounds in a collapse scenario. So of the hundreds or thousands of scenarios that are possible, the question that stood out for me here was, what strategies will hold up for waste management regardless of the scenario? So no matter what happens in our future, the multiplicity of futures, what strategies do we need to plan for now that are going to hold up for waste management? So she encouraged us to break out of the paradigms and prepare for the unexpected. We then did some breakout groups. So everyone had different conversations, and we were talking about validating the principles. And so a couple of the main themes there were about not reinventing the wheel. We want to maximize the efficiency going forward, trying to be a world leader in this work. And so some of the themes that we heard about, the guiding principles here visualized in a circle to show that not one principle is more important than any other principle. And so these 11 principles are created here both in English and in French, to help communicate that work going forward. And then that brought us to the end of day 1. So on day 2, Elder Fred Kelly, who we will have the pleasure and privilege of hearing again soon, asked us to look for the 4 directions, to the elements, including, and what I heard was to the thundercloud, to the 4-legged, to the 2-legged, to the water, looking to the 4 directions so we can begin our work in a good way. Then the panelists who were on the panel for Living a Good Life, the panel called Mino Bima de Ziwin, this image kind of is drawn as a whole. And so I wanted to take a moment to draw how this image kind of comes together. And so on the ground, there's 2 kind of groups of people. And along the bottom being held, it says there's a history of structural inequality and where First Nations are pathologized and traditional knowledges are minimized and the ground is shaky. But there is also this blue band that goes across. And when we move from engagement that's just about informing or tokenizing, moving into consent, and when consent comes from community and leadership, there is this place in the middle where more is possible. And so in the middle, the question could be, how do we influence energy policy so Indigenous people benefit? And that reaching out has to be beyond Western laws. It has to be into something that is informed by Indigenous people and not just in a Western paradigm. It's about true relationships, is what I heard from this panel. And this 2-way respect is based on Indigenous ways of knowing. And some of the paths forward could include capacity building, providing resources, advisory and technical committees, strong Indigenous relations, which creates the meaningful ability to share knowledge and consent. And we also heard about making space for ceremony. We also asked, what do the neighbors think? And so views from communities where waste is stored today. Communities had contributions such as the role of advocacy, emphasizing that they're very invested in the whole cycle of safety, and that they make decisions based on the best science, because as host communities, they understand the issues very well. And two quotes that really stood out for me was, it's easy to scare people, and it's harder to unscare them. And there was a commitment that we love our lake too. The Francophone session was scribed by my colleague Annalie Cornelson, and here it says, well, I will say it in English, but many things are in the graphics that will be provided in French. So asking, what can Francophone contributions be to this conversation? Consultation and consent are essential. These are questions that touch everyone. And at the end of the day, we heard back from more small group work about finding common ground. And the finding common ground really was around this kind of big topic of engagement, among other and many other things. But the engagement almost had 4 themes, which included engagement around education and communication, regulatory engagement, economic engagement, and community engagement. And all throughout, there was the idea that the engagement needs to be early, it needs to be meaningful, and with true representation. So there, again, more details in the graphics will be provided, but you can see here that there's not a one-size-fits-all. Different communities need different approaches. And again, this long-term strategy is on this road that's winding, because we're all about this long-term plan and, again, taking action into the future. Today, there were different project examples from international partners. And then talking about lessons learned. So again, we heard the theme of a journey of waste management, overlapping the science and the social, making sure that at every stage there is an opportunity to dismantle what is created, so it's not being postponed or delayed. We heard about a fascinating case study, an example about a voluntary siting process in New Jersey, where local democracy was strengthened and was a key part of the process. We also heard about an Ontario DGR that did not proceed, and the response from the Saugeen Ojibway Nation, where it's so key that in First Nations engagement needs to be meaningful. And some of the themes that came out from that engagement were about what was the entire nuclear landscape that needed to be considered, what were the real risks, but also realizing and recognizing that consent needed to be throughout. And finally, some of the major themes from this last presentation about local engagement were about engaging early and often, looking at choice for both independent and technical information, but also choice to opt in and to opt out. When we have these long timelines, how will knowledge be retained and passed on, especially if we're looking at decades? And finally, listen. We heard this in almost every session, the need for listening and to build trust. And that could mean, for example, you're not there to sell something, you're there to listen. And so engaging early and often in local engagement brings us to the end of the presentations that we have graphic recording for. But of course, the work will continue. And I hope that these visuals help in the engagement and the communication that you have moving forward. So from all of us at Drawing Change, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. And just a reminder, you can see a lot more of Sam's drawings on our social media. So check out our Twitter feed, and you'll be able to see a lot more, as well as we will have the drawings as part of our report. So you'll be able to see them there again also. And the last panel today that Sam wasn't able to participate in because he was back here in the studio with me was the innovation panel. So we also heard a little bit about what's happening in waste management. So before we move on, I'm going to ask you to do one last piece of work and answer one more poll. So as you know, this is just the start of our engagement with Canadians and Indigenous peoples. So I'd like to ask you to go to the Engage tab, which is right above your video feed, and you will be able to see the poll there. And today's question for you is a multiple choice with an option to add your own response to. So here we go. Please select as many responses that resonate with you. How can we continue to involve you, provide updates on our activities and what we hear? Maybe you prefer direct communication from us, like emails or newsletters, or you'd rather receive specific invites to events. Or video updates are more appealing. How about infographics? Maybe that's how you like to be informed. And finally, you can choose detailed reports. So I'll give you a moment to fill out the poll and let it tabulate the results. And while we're waiting for those results, I will mention that today we heard from a number of international counterparts about how the work that's going on in their countries. We have a very detailed and thorough international benchmarking report on low and intermediate level waste options that are being used internationally. You can find that report. It's posted, as well as an executive summary in French on our website. And if you don't remember that website, it's radwasteplanning.ca. All right, so the results are in, and 86% like the email updates and newsletters. 77% of you would like to receive invites to our events. 45%. Yeah, so sorry, 45% video updates and other information about 50%. And detailed reports, 64%. So you'll be happy to find a lot of this type of information on our website, as I mentioned. So I invite you to visit the website frequently so you can see all of the great material we have posted there. So I am so grateful for your contribution of time and perspectives to make our event a success. And so we heard from a wide variety of speakers, and we started off with why it was important to create an integrated strategy and how we need everyone's honest contribution for this to be a success. And you delivered. We heard about the status of radioactive waste today and about why the government is revisiting its policy on radioactive waste. We heard about the public attitude research. Again, there's Pat's presentation is posted on our website, and we will be posting a summary report in April. Sign up for updates. On day 2, we had the pleasure of hearing from a wide variety of speakers, panelists, and chairs who raised the viewpoints of important social groups, such as neighbors to the communities, neighbors to the waste management facilities, sorry, civil society, environmentalists and activists, youth, francophones, and indigenous perspectives. By listening to each other, we have found some common ground, and we better understand why our views can differ. And today we looked at, those large projects and how we can learn from those, and as well as what we can learn from other countries. So I want to thank everyone who participated in the breakout groups. Thank you very much. This feedback is the backbone of the summit. It will help shape our final report. So as we prepare to say our farewell, we would like to welcome back Elder Fred Kelly to close this time we have spent together. As you may remember from day 2, Kind Walking Bear is an esteemed knowledge holder and practitioner of sacred law from Treaty Number 3 territory. Over to you, Elder Kelly.
Thank you again to all my relations, and that includes everybody who participated so in such stellar fashion in this conference, in this summit. I want to, before I do the final invocation, I'm honored to acknowledge Karine. I think you did a wonderful job of moving things along in such a way, always smiling, which is, and your smile is contagious. So thank you very much for that. And I also wanted to share with you some acknowledgments of what I want to thank the organizers, who I think did a tremendous job. There's a lot of logistical work, technical work. And on that note, I want to thank your technicians who were there to help in any way possible. And because many of us on especially me, I speak for myself on this, I represent the age of the dinosaurs and the fossils when it comes to technology. I can press a button here and there, but I don't know which one. Many times I don't know which one to press. But Schneider and the technical team there were really helpful and very patient with me, and I thank them very much. The people who organized that as well, and there are some silent partners that were here, not only the participants themselves, but I want to acknowledge certain people here who were not as visible as in the actual screening part of this. But there is Bob Watts, who is the Vice President of Indigenous Relations for Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And he has done such a tremendous amount of work bringing the Indigenous perspective, and especially in a situation such as this. Many of our people, and I'm one of them, I consider myself to be studious in science, law, and all other aspects that of impact upon our people. But yet, this presentation, this summit, has revealed the amount of knowledge that is out there, technically available. And there's a network that you mentioned. And I also mentioned our brothers and sisters from across the pond who shared and gave us the honor of giving us their expertise and sharing with us what they're doing, as to network as well with what we're doing in Canada. And so with that, I wanted to mention, as I say, Bob Watts, and there is an elders group, an elders council and youth council connected with the work that Bob Watts is doing, which is not part of Nuclear Waste Management Organization as such, but they sit in council advising, and it's amazing, as I say, the knowledge that's available among the technical people who made presentations. And I found it very astounding, amazing, almost overwhelming. Now, if you reverse the tables a bit, Paul Jones laid out the experiences that they had with respect to dealing with a DGR and the burial of nuclear and spent fuel. And the other one that Mr. Gladue, a friend of mine whom I did a ceremony with some time ago, laid out, in my view, the practical steps that needs to be done by coming to the indigenous peoples, which would facilitate an understanding, if not necessarily concurrence at the end, but certainly how to engage our people. I thought he did a stellar job on that, and I want to acknowledge that. That's not the only one. So when I mention certain people, I'm not excluding other people who did that. I also want to mention that you have involved, and Schonigan is involved here, and Phil Fontaine, of course, knows the nuances, the politics, the technologies, and the mechanics and the dynamics involved with all the social, political, economic, and the social movements amongst indigenous peoples. He carries the knowledge of the ages that have been imparted to him by a great mother, great father, that he has, and he has shared that with us over the years. And so I congratulate you for having involved him with us, because he also has such a stellar staff that can help him and do this kind of communication with in engaging with the Canadian public. On the Canadian public, here we have as well a situation where we talked about policy to an extent, and Phil was trying to do that, given a smaller space of time. But I know that you'll give him more time as time unfolds. And what we're talking about here in his presentations and his chair of that panel was how we would affect policy. And one of the things that was not mentioned, and I am a practitioner of traditional law, you know that there is a great movement here in Canada, which I've been working on now for some about 50 years, participated in the patriation of the Constitution and the inclusion of Section 35 in the Canadian Constitution about treaty and Aboriginal rights. I won't go into any great detail on that, other than to tell you that my point of view on that is not only to affirm and recognize Aboriginal law, or as we call it, Anishinaabe law, Indigenous law, but that we have to live it. That treaties are living, and so they are dynamic even to this day. And so the elders that sit on the Elders Council live by those laws on a daily basis. And here is a part that I want to mention, not critically, but rather share with you an observation. And that is the difference between traditional science and the difference between traditional science and traditional knowledge and contemporary science and contemporary wisdom is the fact that Aboriginal law, Indigenous law, Anishinaabe law combines all of that. It does not segment. And so you see the segmentation that takes place, and it is a very wise, and that's what makes it sound so complicated and so overwhelming at times. That is not a criticism. I thank all those people who shared their area of expertise. But in our world, we take the water, we take the air, we take the fire, we take all of those in our invocations, and our invocations are not just ceremonial. Our invocations are to consecrate and celebrate as a living way of life when we celebrate those laws and we do our ceremonies. So I want to make sure that we do not separate the ceremonies and what we see in the ceremonies away from the main course of our discussions and what we are talking about. Phil knows that. Mr. Gladue knows that. Paul Jones explained that to you in his own way, in his brief. And these are the people, that's what I tell you. that there are 23 people that sit on the Elders Council and the Youth Council. Within that, if you take a median age of 50 or 60, you have at least over 1,000 years of knowledge, which is the wisdom of the ages, in addition to what Phil carries, which is the knowledge of the ages, and these elders carry the wisdom of the ages. And I want to acknowledge that and share that with you. And I want to congratulate you again for reaching out to try and see what that is. And with those statements, I want to tell you that in my closing, it is not a closing. We don't close our sessions. What we say is "Pama minawa," which means "Pama" means later, "Minawa" means again. That means we will meet again later. So all we do is we lower the embers of the fire that we have lit, because you have said that we will continue on this process, and you have such a tremendous amount of knowledge, tremendous amount of people who are carrying it, who are willing to share the honor of sharing that with us. And that, to me, is the basis of what we are looking for in this exercise of being on common land here on Turtle Island, with the benefit of other international brothers and sisters. Here on Turtle Island, we are looking for the sharing the common land so that we will have common ground. And with that, the song I'm going to sing is a healing song as well, which came from my uncle, a medicine man, and may he rest in peace. His name was Alex Skeed, Elder Alex Skeed. And this was a song that he sang when he almost died as a result of an accident. And we have to acknowledge that, because that is spiritual copyright law. When he was healed, he thought he was going to pass away, but he came back to life, and this was a song that was given to him. So I share that with you, because during these hard times of COVID pandemic and other instances that we have, and this won't be the last pandemic, unfortunately, because we've had visitations, but I want to make sure that I share with you the healing song and the power of spiritual healing from the Creator, the spirits of the four directions, the spirits of the four skies, the four earths, Mother Earth, and the Creator, to give to each and every one of you, your partners, your parents, your children, every one of them, your grandchildren, and acknowledging our ancestors and the future generations who are already here. We just do not see them. So that in your families, in your communities, in your municipalities, in your countries, in your nations, may you enjoy in the future, as we move forward from this, that you will have good health and good cheer in your life. And with that, I'll sing the song, and I won't need to say anything else after I'm finished. Bewitch. It's a journey that we have been going, and a journey that we walk together. And so may this journey, and the song says, you are the reason that I walk. And we sing this to the Creator and the spirits, so that we will continue on our journey and continue walking together in a harmonious way, in peace and harmony.
Thank you, Elder Kelly, for helping us say, see you later, and not goodbye. So thank you again to Elder Kelly. Naya Wen, Miigwech, Waliwan, merci, and thank you everyone for taking a next step with us. Please stay in touch through our website, radwasteplanning.ca, and on social media with the hashtag radwasteplan, all one word. We'll send updates to our email subscribers and post regularly on our site, so stay tuned.